Today, we're going to be taking a quick look at this, the Flywoo EL24P receiver for ExpressLRS. Now, this is a small 0.4 gram, 2.4 gig receiver designed to be used with the ExpressLRS system. In this video, we'll just take a quick look at what you get in the kit. We'll then get the board under the microscope and just have a look at what the quality of this one is like compared to the Happy model one, which I had a look at last week. Now, if you haven't seen that video, I did sort of an unboxing and an overview of both the Happy model transmitter as well as the EP1 receiver, and whilst I had no issues with the transmitter, the receiver quality left a lot to be desired. There were some components not soldered correctly and sort of the overall quality of the board wasn't great, so much so mine didn't actually work. However, today what we're going to do though is take a look at this one from Flywoo and just see how this one compares to the others. Now, I'm also going to be taking a look at this one here in the next week as well, which is the Namino receiver, not sure how you pronounce it, and we'll take a look at that one in exactly the same way. So if you're interested in that as well, please do consider hitting the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the little bell next to it as well. Now, I'm doing this video a bit differently to how I usually do them, and that is I'm using the green screen, so that way I'm able to keep myself on the screen whilst we're taking a look on the camera overhead too. Anyway, let's get on with it and let's just take a look at what we get in the box. Now, as I've said, this is the Flywoo ELRS, which is ExpressLRS EL24P 2.4 gig, has a working voltage of 5 volts as you would expect, and the dimensions are 10.8 by 11 by 5 mil, and it weighs just 4 grams. Now, when you get it, it comes in this nice little plastic box. We then have some little foam with the receiver located inside. Now, this is the model with the external antenna. You can get a version of this with the built-in ceramic antenna as well. I think that one is the EL24E, and then this one is the EL24P, which has the small UFL connector on it as well. Now, as I've already said, this is one of the very, very small receivers for literally, whether it be whoops, micro drones, or even normal sized aircraft, but it is that smallest size receiver that we've been seeing on this system. Now, my initial thoughts looking at it is the build quality looks actually quite tidy. Everything looks okay from here, not seeing any issues at all. And we will take a closer look at it under the microscope, but initial thoughts are quite good. And we can also see the Wi-Fi antenna located on the side there as well. We'll hop that out and put it to the side. We then also have the antenna, which has been included with it as well. Just taking a look at this compared to what I had with the Happy model, well, it looks fairly symmetrical. It looks fairly tidy. It is largely built up of what looks like heat shrink tubing, so it is somewhat hand manufactured compared to the others, but overall it looks all right. Then we've got some more foam. Let's get through that. And then in the bottom of the pack, we've got some crystals, silica gel, a Flywoo sticker. That's a nice little addition. We like that. We always like having stickers. There is some heat shrink tubing as well as some silicon wires. No, they're not silicon. Well, if they are quite a hard silicon, but I don't know, they might be, but there's certainly some wires for the receiver to allow us to connect it. Now, what we'll do next is hop over to the microscope, stick it under there and have a look at how it looks, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about the firmware. So, as you can see, we have the receiver under the microscope now, and we're taking a look at the main RF side first of all. Looking at the receiver, this is a very similar design to the EP1s. What we've got is our UFL, obviously for attaching our antenna. We've got our filter, we've got our clock, and then we've got our RF mux chip, which is the, this should be the SX1280, which it does look to be there. And then we've just got some sundry components around it. Now, what's really nice on this board, I'll say up front, is it's nice that they've labeled the inputs very easily for you. So you can see plus, minus, transmit, receive. That's just a nice little addition. Obviously, we've got the ExpressLRS up here as well. Looking over the quality of everything on this side of the board, it looks absolutely smashing. No issues whatsoever. All of the components are straight. Everything's in place. Nothing looks off to the side. If we dive in a little bit closer and start just taking a look at things like how the solder balls are soldered on the side of the chip. That looks absolutely fine. No issues at all. Very clean. Let me just flip him up the other side as well. Yep, I'm happy with that. No issues at all there. No issues at all there. And no issues there. So from a quality point of view on this side of the board, everything looks really good and there's no concerns here at all. And the soldering around the UFL looks good too. If we spin him out to the other side and just come out a little bit so we can get it all on screen, again, taking a look at the board fully, what we have is our main SoC chipset up here, which we'll talk about in a second. We've got our Wi-Fi antenna, which is over here. We've got our clock again. We've got our regulator here for supplying the 3.3 volts to the chipset. And again, they've also labeled the inputs on this side too, which is again another nice addition. Now, looking at the quality of the board on this side, overall, again, everything looks nice and tidy. We do have, I think it's a resistor from the look of it, slightly off angle there, but this is me being extremely picky. Overall, the build looks really tidy. For the most part, all of the components are in place where they should be. We've got our LED at the top, and everything just looks as we would expect it to be, basically. Now, we've got the ESP8285, which is the multi-controller chipset, which also handles the Wi-Fi. Now, this is an MCU, which also has a built-in Wi-Fi functionality as well, and that's why they're using this on ExpressLRS, because it gives that really nice ability to upgrade the firmware via the Wi-Fi rather than have to do it via the flight controller all of the time. Now, we've also got our button over here, which is a very small button, but yeah, that looks fine. That looks no problems at all. Now, just again, let's dive in a little bit closer and just try to look at the quality of the soldering and the components on this one. The balls on the side of that MCU look fine, and this is where I started seeing some issues on the EP1. Absolutely fine there. Let's spin him round on the Wi-Fi antenna side. Yeah, that looks good. And that looks absolutely spot on. No problems there at all. Looking at the soldering around just some of the legs on stuff. Let's just get in a bit closer so we can see that. Again, we do have that resistor. That looks a tad off, but that's me being extremely picky. That one there, that's fine. That all looks soldered as it should be. We've got the regulator over here. Again, soldered nicely. Components all look soldered. No signs of any issues. Yeah, you know, literally nothing to complain about whatsoever. It is incredible just how small they've been able to pack this on, because these are absolutely minuscule components. So, from a quality point of view, this board at this point does look light years ahead of what I've seen with the EP1 from Happy Model. If mine was one bad one, hopefully the next one I'll get in will be much better. However, what I have to say up front is the Flywoo, absolutely nothing to be concerned about or worried about at all. I'd be happy to fit this pretty much in any aircraft I have. So just jumping over quickly to the Flywoo website, you can see the versions of this that are available. Now, as I've already said, you can get it with the version that I've got here with the UFL antenna, which is $16. And you've then got the standard version, which is the EL24E with the built-in ceramic antenna, which is available for $14. It is, again, that small board design like we've seen from the other ones, like the EP1s, and it weighs just 0.4 grams. So it is literally one of the smallest, lightest receivers that you can get out there, let alone for ExpressLRS. Now, just jumping down, as I've already said, it's using the ESP8285 MCU, which is the microcontroller, and it's using the SX1280 RF transceiver chip. It has a frequency range of 2.4 to 2.5 gigs, which is to be expected, and a maximum received refresh rate of 500 Hertz. So that is that maximum low latency link speed that everyone is after. Working voltage of 5 volt, again, as we've expected, and it has a peak gain of 3.7 dB. Now, firmware-wise, this one doesn't have its own custom build looking at it, and they show you down here to choose the DIY version of the install for the 2.4 gig receiver. So if I hop over to the ExpressLRS configurator, what they're suggesting is you select the DIY 2.4 gigs, and then the DIY 2.4 gigs ESP8285 SX1280, which is based on the chipsets, and you can then flash that either via the Betaflight flash through, the UART, or Wi-Fi, depending on what you need to do. And again, you've got your standard options available, whether you want your enabled on the telemetry, so you get the full telemetry rather than the limited one. You've got your bind phrase, which you've got down here as well, and all of the usual settings for ExpressLRS. So it's the next day, as you can see, because I've had a shave. And what we're going to do next is just get this receiver set up. So what we're going to do is update the firmware. And we're going to do that via Betaflight pass-through with the flight controller, but we're also going to try updating via Wi-Fi as well. We'll also make sure I've got my settings correct and my binding phrase correct, so it will connect to my transmitter. Now, this receiver is like all of the other ExpressLRS ones, whereas there are several ways to actually bind it. Most common is via the binding phrase, like on Wi-Fi. So you have a phrase on the receiver and a phrase on the transmitter, and as long as they match, they will connect. You can do it a couple of other ways, but we're not going to look at that today. There is a button on this receiver, but it is not for binding. It's not really used at the moment, so don't get that confused, and you do need to still do it the same method. So what we're going to do first of all is install the latest firmware. I'm going to do that by a USB pass-through on Betaflight. So to do this, we're going to power it up, and what you'll then see is the LED on the receiver kick in, and what it will do is flash slowly first of all, basically telling us it's waiting for a connection. But if we leave it, it will go into that fast flash, which is that Wi-Fi mode, but also allows us to update the firmware, and is sort of a bit like a DFU mode somewhat, basically. So what we're going to then do is go onto the desktop, and we're going to choose the latest version. Now, today, they have only just dropped version 1.2. Actually, it wasn't today, it was yesterday at the point of me filming this, but it is this week that it has dropped. That release has a couple of other fixes in as well, and I might talk about that in a separate video, but we're going to choose the 1.2. We're going to then choose the device category. Now this is the DIY 2.4 as I showed you earlier, and then we're going to select the DIY 2.4 ExpressLRS, which is the EP8285 and the SX1280, because that's the two chipsets on this one. Now I'm going to make sure we've got all of the correct settings. So we've got a binding phrase down here, which is for mine, which is Man's FPV drone. Don't mind you guys knowing that one. We've got our hybrid switches enabled and our telemetry enabled, because I'm using that. And then we've got our auto Wi-Fi on interval, which is that feature where it's gone into now, because you can see the LED flashing. We're going to then look for it down here, so it's on COM10, and we're then going to simply build and flash. Now this will download the firmware from the website background, so it will actually get the firmware files from ExpressLRS servers, download them, compile the firmware, and then upload it onto it. Now, this process can take a little bit of time the first time you've done it. Depending on what firmware you've updated on your receiver before or your transmitter, there may be a little bit of a delay in doing it, but you just simply let it go through, and we'll just wait for it now to do the compiling, and then it should jump into the actual transmitting phase, installing that onto the receiver. So as you can see, it's doing the writing part, so it's now actually updating the firmware on the receiver, and it's simply writing it down, and there we go. We're done. It's ready to go, and this now should connect straight to my transmitter. So what I'll go do is grab that, and we'll just check that's working. Okay, so I've gone and got my Mambo, as you can see here, and what we're going to do is power this back up, and hopefully we should connect. There we go. All done. It's connected straight to my transmitter. We can see, don't know if you guys can see, we've got the LEDs on the back and solid LED on the receiver. So it's all connected and ready to go. If I did want to connect this to Betaflight, I'm not sure if I've got have I got Betaflight on this? I haven't got it on this laptop. I use it on the other one, and it would show us the receiver inputs, but we're definitely connected. So what we'll do now is we'll do the same update via Wi-Fi and just show you that process as well. Okay, this time we're going to flash it via Wi-Fi. Now, we need to do this procedure a little bit differently, because there are some things you need to take into account. For instance, when I connect my laptop, which I'm using for this because my desktop doesn't have Wi-Fi built in, I'm going to lose connection to the internet. So you need to make sure you've actually downloaded or built the firmware file in advance before doing that. If you're using a computer that has both a LAN and a Wi-Fi connection, you probably won't have this problem. So for me, what we need to do first of all is say we're going to flash it via Wi-Fi. We're going to choose the firmware we want, Again, making sure we got the DIY receiver, we've got the version right, but this time I'm going to click build and not build and flash. What I want it to do is save the firmware file locally on the computer so I can then upgrade to that manually after, rather than have to do the build and flash like it asks you to do usually. So we're just going to let it do this build first of all, and this will simply just compile the firmware file and save it on the computer, and you can see that it's come up and done that there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is put this into that Wi-Fi flashing mode. So again, we're going to power it up and just wait for the receiver to enter into that Wi-Fi mode. Again, 20 seconds, and then that LED will go from a slow flash to a fast flash, and then it should appear on the Wi-Fi on your laptop or computer. So there we go. We're in it now. We're ready to go. So I'm going to shift over to the desktop. The next thing we're going to do is go down and find it on our Wi-Fi network. Now this should appear down here, and it is called ExpressLRS. Now I've connected to this already before, but the password is ExpressLRS as well. There we go. So it should come up now with a page to say, welcome to ExpressLRS. Your page is updated. From here, you can upgrade the firmware on your RX. Now we can simply now do it from this page. We don't actually have to do it via the ExpressLRS app or the configurator. We can simply come to here and click choose file. We then need to find the location that it saved the file to. Now, something I did notice, it does put it in a rather unusual place. Let me just open the window up. There it is. It's stuck it under there. So what I think I'm going to do is copy that and move that to the desktop. It's stuck it under app data local temp, which isn't really ideal for me. So we're going to paste that onto the desktop. There we go. And then from this one, we can go and find that on the desktop. We're then going to choose that file, and then we're going to simply click the update option. And we're then going to let the receiver do it. Now, if I just show you the receiver, you can now see that the light has gone off. So there's no light showing at all at this point. It now comes back up on the screen and says update success, rebooting. So we're going to leave it. And again, if we go back, you can see we've come back now to the LED flashing. Now, a piece of advice I'm going to give is give this some time before rushing to close the window on your computer or knowing that it's finished or power it down. Just leave it. Don't rush to power it down, just in case it's still doing some of that firmware installation or booting process. Whilst it has come up, as I said, showing rebooting update success, just give it a minute or so, just so you're 100% happy it has done what it's meant to do. As you can see, again, it's gone back into that Wi-Fi mode. So we're going to assume it's all okay. So I'm not going to rush to turn it off. I'm going to turn my remote back on, and then we'll actually power it down, and then we'll power it back up. So I think we've given it long enough. So I'm going to turn it off. We're going to power it now back up. And again, you heard it tick, and we're all in, we're all connected, and everything's doing what it should be doing. Okay, so just to quickly show you this is all working as it should be, I've come into Betaflight now, and if I go down to the receiver tab, you can see we've got everything coming in as it should be. So the receiver's connected to the transmitter on the Mambo, and we've got everything in place ready to go. And again, this receiver is set up exactly the same as all of the other ones. So if we go into the configuration, under the receiver, we're down as a serial-based receiver and CRSF. And under the ports tab, I've got it connected on, which one are we on? We're on UART1 with both the TXRX connected. So yeah, that's straightforward. Okay, so that is pretty much it from me on this one. Overall, I have to say the ExpressLRS receiver from Flywoo looks a very decent option. The quality on this from a build point of view is absolutely spot on. It updated the firmware correct. No problems whatsoever. Nice, easy to use, and ultra small at 0.4 grams. Now, if I compare this to the EP1 that I checked, it is light years ahead from a build quality point of view. But I do want to add, other people have commented that they've had no problems with their EP1s at all. It may be that I had a bad one, and I am hoping to get another one in the near future as well. However, I will add, from my personal belief, the build quality on the Flywoo is leagues ahead, and if you are looking for one, I would much rather trust this than one of those ones. And you can also get this in that ceramic antenna version as well. They are a bit more expensive, but I think that expense is worth it, because at least you know you're getting a quality product. Now, I am going to be making a lot more videos on ExpressLRS over the coming weeks and months, and in the next one we're going to be taking a look at this, which is the Namimno receiver. This is a slightly bigger one, so to put that under the microscope as well, just to show you, it is much larger than the smaller micro receiver versions. However, it is still a small receiver overall. Let me just get it out to show you very quickly. And we will be doing the same thing on this one, which is getting it under the microscope as well. So just to show you, it is more like a traditional crossfire receiver size, although again, it is still smaller. This one again does have a single antenna, it's not diversity. So we'll be doing the same thing on this one in the next couple of days. We'll do an overview of it, we'll get it under the microscope, and then we'll update the firmware and see how that process goes as well. Now, if you're interested in seeing that, please do consider hitting the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the little bell next to it as well. If you'd like to support the channel, there are links to Patreon as well as Buy Me a Coffee. I also have a Discord server, and there's some fantastic people over there who use this system as well as many other systems such as the DJI FPV. And if you're interested in coming over and saying hi, I will put a link to that in the description of this video as well. Anyway, that's it from me. Stay safe, and I will speak to you guys again soon.